Hello, everyone. Happy Black History Month and welcome to Michael Page's celebration, All Black Everything, the Black Experience Front and Center. My name's Samir Adrissi. I'm an Associate Director within our Chicago office. And all month long, we have some really great programming that includes 2 external panels, one of which is today, 2 internal discussions, along with content that highlights and acknowledges the impact and influence of Black people and Black culture. A big thank you to all those who have been involved in the planning committee, particularly Paula, Ariel, and Gail, for all the work that you've put in. For today's panel, Black in Corporate America, our goal is twofold. Firstly, to elevate and uplift Black voices from esteemed individuals to inspire other Black professionals and students who are watching today. And secondly, to raise awareness and educate the allies within corporate America of what it's like to navigate these spaces as a Black person. So we've got a fantastic lineup of panelists. We've got a fantastic host for the next hour. Questions are already set, but if we have time towards the end, we'll open it up to Q&A. So now let me introduce you to our host, Terra Davis. Terra is a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist who focuses on engagement, partnerships, and business development for all industries, including oil and gas, healthcare, and financial institutions. Currently, she serves as a client diversity and inclusion manager at Norton Fulbright, a global law firm. Terra, thank you so much, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Samir. I am so excited to have this conversation today with our wonderful panelists who are going to share their own personal experiences and really shed light on an important topic as we enter into Black History Month. So our first panelist is Tony Wyllie. He's the president of Special Olympics North America, overseeing the programs in the US, Caribbean, and Canada. He spent close to 3 decades as an NFL executive and is a native of New York who grew up in Houston. He graduated from Texas Southern University and has a business degree from Rice. Frederick Brown III has been working for LinkedIn for 3 years and recently took a role of sales operations and strategy for their global small business team. Prior to LinkedIn, Frederick received his MBA from Washington University in St. Louis, and he's also been living in Chicago for 3 years, where he just purchased his first home last year and volunteers with the youth of the community. Terry Rostic is a 2-time 40 under 40 honoree in the state of Michigan and started the first Black-owned brewery in the state. He has 20 years of leadership experience in corporate America and leads community relations for the country's 2nd largest nonprofit rehabilitation hospital. Dr. Delonia Cooley is a professor of marketing at Texas Southern University. She is also an author and a member of the Collegiate Chapters Council and the co-chair of the International Conference of the American Marketing Association. Welcome to each of these wonderful panelists. We're going to jump right in with this first question, which is, in one word or sentence, how would you describe your experience in corporate America?
Well, I'll say exciting. I started passing out stats in the Astronome in Houston, Texas, and worked my way up to be a senior vice president, now president. And I really worked in public relations, I had to work with the players, I had to work with staff, with the coaches, with the media, with coworkers. So really, I got to know a lot of different people, dealing with a bunch of different egos, different personalities, different backgrounds, and found a way to work together. So I would say, exciting.
I guess I'll jump in here and say my journey has been one of, I would say, a lot of learning, growth, and resilience. Tech will now be my 3rd industry that I've been in, dating myself here. Started out in financial services, then went into consulting, now into technology. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of ups and downs. It's been a lot of growing my mindset. And I've enjoyed the journey so far.
Nice. I'll hop right in. I'll go next. I would say it's been a beautiful struggle, right? It's beautiful in one aspect, and then you also have the struggle of the ups and the downs. But, at the end of the day, working in corporate America can be very beneficial for the community and the folks that you're trying to help.
I would like to add from the backside going from forward, going backwards, being in academe from corporate, my small stint in corporate in the academe, people would be interested to think, no, it's interesting is the word I like to use. And what I mean by that is the actual comparisons of side by side of academic and corporate are very much the same. The hierarchies that you have to navigate, the relationships and the networking you have to depend on, and all of the glass ceilings that are there, but you don't see them. So the climb is still the same.
So I've heard a mix of things from interesting to exciting, which leads me to this question because what we often see in corporate America is a predominantly white setting. So when discussing race in those white spaces, it's still treated as taboo in 2022. Is it worse to say nothing at all? Or do you speak up with the chance of getting it wrong?
I'm thinking about two situations real quick that I had in my career. One time with the Los Angeles Rams, we were moving at one point to St. Louis. We ended up moving to St. Louis. And I remember this was right around the draft, so I was really busy, and they brought in a real estate company to show all the employees, where good places in St. Louis to live. So I remember the slideshow was, they turned the lights off, you can see the slides. So I kind of came in late and I slid in the back. Well, when they at the end of the presentation, they asked for questions, and one of the young people in the staff said, "Hey, what is there for young folks to do?" And I remember the person said, "Well, there's a riverboat named called the Casino Queen, but it's in East St. Louis. But I gotta warn you, it's a lot of black people." And I was startled. I raised my hand. I'm like, "What's wrong with that?" They said, "Oh, no." I said, No. Let's get back to what you just said. Why do you have to make sure? Why do you make a point that it's black people?" And when she tried to explain, I got upset and I walked out and I slammed the door. And I went to my office, and just so happened my boss called, and I told him what happened. He told the team president. The president walked in and fired him on the spot. So you have to know when to speak up. The other time, real quick, we're in a boardroom, and the schedule came out of the season, and they had certain themed games. And the first game they mentioned was called Fighting White Night. And they said, "Does anyone have a problem with this?" And I kind of raised my hand, and I was like, I don't want to be I don't want to be the angry black man, but I kind of made a point, and so I said, "Hey, is the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan going to be there?" As a black man, I'm kind of offended by that. And they're like, "You know what? I really didn't think about it," and they killed it right away. So I think if you approach it the right way, you got to speak up, because otherwise it's not going to stop.
To piggyback off of that, absolutely, it's worse not to say nothing. And I remember when I was at my old consulting firm, this might have been 2017. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. Young black man was killed. They were protesting. And I was in this training class, and they were protesting downtown. My office was downtown. And they decided to move us out to the county where the mall was to take this training class so that it wasn't interrupted by the protests. Well, protesters decided to come out to the county as well. No justice, no peace. And as we're in this training class now, I'm in one of two black people, and the other person was visiting from out of town. And they're starting to panic. They're starting to say, "Hey, we're going to close down this building. You need to leave, blah, blah, blah." And everybody in this office setting, people that I have been working with for a year now, they started saying things like, "Don't they have jobs? Why are they out here? Why are they coming here? Why don't they stay where they're at?" And my problem wasn't really that they were saying that, because racist gonna racist. My problem was they felt that comfortable saying that with me and another black person in the room. And I realized as I looked around, consulting firm, I'm in a suit, they're in a suit. they thought I was one of the good ones. They thought I was one of them. Little did they know, the day before I was out there in the protest my damn self. And I had to say something about it. I had to say, like, you guys realize the man that got killed looks like me. When I'm not at work, I'm in a hoodie, I'm in ball shorts, I'm chilling. There's nothing that separates me from the man that got killed. But y'all sitting here looking at this like doesn't affect me, shouldn't affect me because I'm sitting here in a suit with you guys. And that's not okay. Everything that you're saying right now in front of me, especially in front of me in general, is not okay. What ended up happening from that was the small consulting firm that I had no D&I program, and I ended up building that from scratch myself because I was never going to find myself in a situation like that again. But had I just sat there and been the good one and said nothing, they would have thought that was okay. The whole company would have just proceeded like this is okay, and it absolutely was not.
Yeah, that's a great story. And that whole term, being one of the good ones, I think people get deemed that in corporate America sometimes because they feel like if you're here, you can't be some of the people who are out there. We'll probably talk a little more about being authentically yourself, but I think it's worse not to say anything as well. We might have all heard this, closed mouths don't get fed, right? At the table. Again, when you get a seat at the table, you should be saying something, and that's what I always tell people, regardless of the situation, getting things wrong is a part of life. So you can't be afraid to get something wrong, and you might get it wrong. It's easier to walk back on something than it is to be silent and never say anything. I think MLK had once said, we don't remember the words of our enemies, but we remember the silence of our friends, right? So being silent is really not an option. Being silent won't spark that change that you're looking for. I've had situations before, even with my logo currently for my brewery, we put a Black woman as our logo, an African beer goddess. And I remember reaching out and talking to some marketing folks at large, like national breweries. And I remember them saying, no one's ever gonna buy that. That doesn't fit. Right. And I remember saying, how do you know that? And you've never done this before, and if somebody won't buy my product based on seeing a Black woman or a goddess on it, then I don't want you as a customer. Right. And, they were proven to be wrong. We sell hoodies in 50 states. We sell more hoodies than we do beer at this point. I can't even get beer in certain states, but I got hoodies in it. So, again, being authentic to yourself and just speaking up, and defending those things. It's definitely worth saying something.
So you were saying about our allies. I have a little bit of a different story. So I was in a meeting. I was the only me in the meeting, which I'm very used to. So we were talking about some issues that were going on with the conference that we were doing, and the conversation was fine. And I was, and next thing I know, the conversation turned and it was about me. Like all the things that were going on and the issues, I was like, I was completely taken off guard. So I'm sitting there like, so they're having this whole conversation about me this whole time. They were talking about me, but they weren't necessarily generalizing me until someone were bold enough to say, well, yeah, and she. So I'm trying to gather my thoughts as to, okay, how, for the lack of better words, how nuck am I bucking in this situation? Because it was going to go bad pretty quickly, professionally so. Okay. But I'm kind of gathering my thoughts. And so one of my colleagues, non-African American, she spoke up. She said, I really feel like this is unfair. She said, I feel like it's unfair because you can tell by the look on her face that she has no clue what y'all are talking about. And apparently y'all been having these meetings about the meetings before you got here. So if you had something that you really needed to say, you should have been adult enough to say it to her before we got to this forum. And so it takes me back to that whole our allies and how to make sure that we are genuine with them and allow them those spaces. Because once she said what she had to say, it gave me enough time to gather my thoughts, but it also gave me, I guess, an introduction into the room to be able to say exactly how I felt without it being added into the confusion of what they were trying to build around me. Now, did I need that? No, because I'm adult enough and professional enough that I could have done that very well without her stepping to the plate first. However, sometimes we have to have those types of allies in those rooms because we need someone else to help fight in the trenches with us. And I actually had that experience. And with that experience, I was able to understand how that looks and how that felt. And I understood the value of what that meant. So that's my little experience from that.
I think what's really interesting about what each and every one of you shared is the fact that these stories don't end here. And there is someone in the audience or someone who's not watching this who has experienced something very similar and not known exactly how to handle those situations in that moment at that time, or handled it and said and felt heavy afterward because of what they were dealing with or what they saw or heard in those experiences. I have seen an uptick in the number of invitations that I've received personally about conversations around race. How can we normalize the conversations around and about race? Can we normalize it? Tony, you're on mute,
Yeah,
but
there
I
you go.
saw
Let's
you
take
get
off mute.
excited.
I guess I'll start off again. I'll be the lead off man. Back to that same incident with the real estate agent. One of my coworkers, we ended up being really close. I mean, we're to the point he was a groomsman in my wedding. I always told him, I said, you're gonna be the only white guy in my wedding. And he would say, no, I'm not, because you're never getting married. But anyway, my buddy's name was Kirk Reynolds. And I remember after that incident, he was like, I can't believe that happened. I saw it, but I couldn't believe it. And a couple of players came in the office and we basically sat him down and said, you don't understand. When you're getting followed in the stores or people holding on to their purses. I said, you're reminded, I told him, you're reminded every day that you're Black, every day. And I proved a point to him. We had meetings in New York City a couple of years later. And I said, we're going to try this out. You stand on this side of the corner, I'm on the side on the other side, and let's see who can get a cab. Let's see how many times you can get a cab. And sure enough, he was able to get 4 cabs, and I'm still waiting on mine. So I had to. I was comfortable enough. We're friends where I can not only speak about race and the things I was going through. I was actually able to show him by giving an example of trying to hail a cab in New York. So you have to have that comfort level with the person to be able to really break down the wall and just be candid.
So I would say not only can we normalize it, we have to. There's no choice. You can't tell by me sitting down here, but I'm 6'3", 250 pounds. When I walk into a room, I'm walking into that room big and I'm walking in there Black. And those are going to be the first things you notice about me. I can't hide that fact. So I have to normalize it because it's very much a part of who I am and how I show up, especially in the professional life. I remember when I was going to get my MBA, and I would openly tell this to my classmates because it was a class of 90 students. And like I knew the number, but I didn't know the demographic breakdown. So I was thinking when I walk into this room, am I going to be the angry Black man or am I going to be the token Black man? And out of 90 MBA graduate students, I was the only Black person. So I was like, shit, I guess I got to be both. And that was a conversation that I would have with my classmates because they needed to know that's what I feel in this room. That I'm not just the minority, I'm the only one. And what happens a lot of times, especially when you're the only one, is you get looked at like you're speaking for all Black people. Everything you do represents every single Black person that ever lived or everywhere. I'm carrying my ancestors on my back when I'm just taking a quiz. And that's the pressure that I feel in this room. And if I can't have that normal conversation with you, then I can't have a conversation with you at all. And in professional spaces, that happens so often where Black people show up in spaces where they're the only one there and they're carrying all this weight that if you can't talk about it, you're never going to feel comfortable in that workspace. You're never going to feel like you matter. You're never going to feel like you're included. So it absolutely has to be normalized for Black people just to feel normal at work.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I've been quoting people, so I'm gonna quote the famous Allen Iverson. Practice. We talking about practice. Honestly, it has to get normalized, but practice is the best way to do it. I tell people, if you look at it from a different standpoint, I always say when you run into situations about race at your work, don't be afraid to have those courageous conversations. I would say check and educate, right? You need to check if you run into something that is either really racist or racist, period, or if someone doesn't know, but then also take the time to educate at that point. And I think that's how you build those better relationships. There's a lot of implicit bias in corporate America. And so I teach a little bit about implicit bias here at the hospital and for other folks. And so when you talk about implicit bias, it's like your background and who you are makes your story, right? And people's backgrounds of how they were raised and what they watched on TV and what they make these associations with, again, leads to assumptions. So, in my opinion, what you have to do is practice these conversations. Don't be afraid to have them. But also in corporate America, for your organization, it has to be okay to have these conversations. And it's not for the fact where, you look at me as a Black person and you just have all these questions, right? It's not up to the minority that you want to know more about to educate you, right? I think you have to do a little bit of education on your own, trying to find some different experiences. And that goes across races and colors there for that. I had a situation where a really good friend of mine, a neighbor, he's a hip hop head like me, white guy, and he gave me a Public Enemy mask. He's a huge Public Enemy fan, and so am I. And I wore it actually to the hospital. And I remember I had a very good conversation with a person here. They were looking at me all intently, and she stopped me and she says, "So that's a police officer in a crosshair." And so I was like, no, that's Chuck D. This is Public Enemy. And I really broke down the entire story of who they were. And then we unpacked it, and we got to the point of she saw a black and white mask. She saw me. She associated that with Black Lives Matter at the time and everything that was going on. And I think George Floyd had just been murdered and all of these things were coming out. So she was assuming that was me going against the police. And so, we had a conversation and, but that was all implicit, right? She saw that. And those are all the things she thought. She thought police officer, Black person, Black Lives Matter. He hates the police. And we had that conversation. And I told her, I said, well, if my parent was a police officer, it'd be pretty silly for me to wear that, right? And so she never really associated Black men or Black people as police, so we started breaking all of that down and we had this really good conversation. And we were able to grow from that. So, those are great opportunities of where you normalize talking about race and you normalize, again, you check it, but you also can educate and then we can all grow from there.
This is interesting. So, again, with my background in academia, most people don't associate. It's hilarious, honestly. It is, of all PhDs, it's less than 7% of us that are Black that have a PhD. And a percentage of that have their PhDs in business, because historically Black people got their PhDs in education and non-science areas. So normally if I go to an event and my husband is with me and they introduce us as, if they say Dr. Cooley and I walk in the room, everyone can probably guess who Dr. Cooley is between me and my husband. It's not me. I'll just give y'all a hint. It's not me. And my husband's a Black man, so don't. But I said all that to say this. It's okay to start having those conversations. Matter of fact, I invite those conversations. I thrive for those conversations. I have a very good friend. Her children are biracial, and she and I had to have a conversation about hair, because for the lack of better words, when I saw her children, I was like, okay, look, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but we're gonna have to do something about this. This is not right. I said, you do understand that Black hair is not the same as your hair, because she's a white woman. And I said, your baby's hair, their hairs look like mine. And I told her, I said, there's a difference. And so we had that conversation. We went as far back as to why there's a difference and what does that mean? Because you don't know what you don't know. and it was harmless. We also had to have a conversation about how does she walk into a room and teach her children, because her thing for me is, you're so confident when you walk in a room. Now, I'm not 6'3". I would love to be 6'3", though. That's a whole nother story. We talked about that another day. But when I walk into a room, I was taught as a young child from my mother, whose mother was raped by a bunch of non-African American men at that time when we were living deep in the South. I was taught to walk into a room and be proud of who I am when I walk into that room, because walking into that room means that you realize that I'm bringing all them with me. I'm bringing everything that I was taught, everything that I experienced. I grew up in a very small, all white town, and I could tell you horror stories, nothing like physical, but one story, but nothing really physical, but a lot of emotional and mental things that today it's like, wow, you actually had to suffer those things. Yes, we had to go through those things, as far as there was my mom had to bring my mom had to bring the NAACP into our little town because they tried to kick my brother out of school for chewing gum. I mean, it was that serious. She had to threaten to get a lawyer because I was the valedictorian in my school, but they tried to take that from me to give it to another young little white girl because her mom was the president of the small bank in that small town. And it's just a matter of breaking down those misunderstandings. And sometimes it's just downright misknowledge, miseducation, misinformation, that you have to break those things down and let people know, hey, it's okay for us to have this conversation, but it's not okay for you to walk around ignorant and claim that ignorance is okay so you can keep operating in that ignorance. Because for me, that's what I feel like where we fail. We can't continue to allow people to use ignorance as their scapegoat or their blanket. So let me give you that information. So now what's your next excuse?
This is also important, and I think really important for everyone listening in to hear and understand as well. It's also, I think, about intent. Like, what is your intent behind this conversation or the things that you're saying? And also, in addition to that, I think that it's really important to establish some sort of relationship with that person. And as you enter into these conversations, there's so many conversations that I've had with people in the legal space in particular, because it's not diverse at all. I'm usually the only, and I'm now we're giving heights. I'm 5'3" and I'm petite. So when I come into a room, I don't necessarily command a whole lot of anything. So I'm usually having to make up for that. And I think that it's really important to understand that there are people who are coming into these spaces, these predominantly white spaces, who are Black and have a full experience with racism. And though you may not have encountered that, that does not mean that it is not real, that those experiences and those things that have happened are not real. I got to get into this because someone mentioned George Floyd and the murder of George Floyd. And we saw a lot of well-meaning companies rise to the occasion or completely miss the mark when it came to communicating and advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. All four big words for everybody right now. And in particular, in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the sentencing, there was a lot of that going on. How can companies fail and succeed in their DE&I efforts? And don't worry about taking it all, because I know this is a lofty, heavy question.
I'm going to start off with just 2 words, folks. Never forget. You got to let them never forget, because yeah, it's great. I lost George Floyd. You know, my phone was blowing up. People saying, "Are you okay?" I'm seeing all this. I mean, the guilt level was at a fever pitch, and at some point, you know, like COVID, it's going to be gone. It's going to go away, and we can't go back to the way it was. So my advice is to make constant reminders that it can't forget about this, and we have to do things to make it better and create change. So I'll let the other panelists please weigh in.
So, Tony, you hit the point that I was going to make right on the head, with random people reaching out. So here's where companies fail and how they can start succeeding. So I can't remember the incident. I don't think it was George Floyd, but it might have been George Floyd. The incident happens, and then leadership comes out, makes some blanket statement, and then you proceed. And at the time at LinkedIn, I was a part of this this D&I group, and they were all having conversations. It was actually led by two white women. Another story for another time. But everybody was having conversations about, what should leadership be saying? What should we be doing? How do we address this? It needs to be addressed. And they could tell my face was visibly just silent. I wasn't saying anything. So after everybody said their words, someone specifically said, Fred, you look like you want to say something about this. And what I tried to explain to them was sort of twofold. First and foremost is, I don't really care to hear from leadership. In these spaces, as a Black person, you kind of go numb when things like this happen. And I was in the sales role at the time, and what am I actually expecting leadership to say? Another Black person was killed. This sucks. Good luck selling LinkedIn. Like, we don't get time off for that. We're not expected to do less work than that. You kind of have to go numb to survive these spaces. So there's really nothing leadership could give a blanket statement about to make me feel better about it. But the main reason for that is because, like Tony said, the minute something like that happens, I get all of this outpour from people asking me, am I okay? Do I want to talk? Is there anything they can do for me? I was in a sales role and people offered to take my sales calls for me, which was just weird because I don't really trust you to do my business. And I don't have relationships with these people. Some of these people, the last time I talked to them was at orientation a couple years before that. And I don't have the time to, even if you mean well by it, I don't have the time to cater to your white guilt or your white savior complex. And that's how it comes off when you're doing that. When I have no relationship for you, but now you want me to unpack what I'm feeling about this on you, that's not actually what you want. You're just saying this to be blanket. And what a lot of allies don't understand is that is not the approach to take. That is not success. Because I'll give you a reverse example of that. November 2019, something incredible happened. You may have heard of it. We elected our first Black female vice president. Leadership didn't make an announcement. No one reached out to me to ask me how I felt. No one wanted to talk about it. No one wanted to take my calls. I have no time to deal with people who only want to talk to me when bad things are happening to Black people. If you cannot celebrate great things happening to Black people, as a leadership, as a company, as peers, I don't have time to unpack the plight of the Black person on you. That's how they need, if you want to know how companies need to start succeeding, they need to start celebrating Black people as much as they send those blanket emails about another tragedy is happening in this country.
Yeah, I like everything you said, brother. That was spot on, and I like what Tony said. Never forget. I think where companies also fail is they think words will solve the problem, right? They can write this elaborate statement, they can post it on their social media, they can send it out from the head of their company, from their chairs. Words don't solve anything in a company. It's culture, So I think where a lot of companies fail at is they don't take the time to really self-examine where they are at in the D&I journey, where they could get better at. I saw a lot of statements from local companies where I'm at in Michigan that were, against all of this. And, I know at least 10 Black people on a non-disclosure right now because they had all these issues within their walls, right? Things like that. So, I think where companies fail are, they turn a blind eye to what they do or how their company operates just to kind of get a soundbite. So I think if people are really legit about this, it's really not about the soundbite. It's not about these words that you write for social media or that you send out to your company. It's examining, how have we been in the past? What have we done to elevate Black voices within our organization? What does our leadership team looks like? What does our board look like? What do our managers, frontline, who's paid, looking at all of those things, I think they don't want to take the time to do that. It's easier to ask your marketing department to say, hey, can you craft a really nice letter for us? Because, we really want to show the community that we're out there, but it's that internal community. If you're not helping that internal community, you shouldn't be talking to your external community about your stance. So I think that's where a lot of companies fail.
Okay, so I have to give y'all a different side. So I work in an HBCU, a historically Black college and university. I'm just gonna be honest. All of them were on the come up because of this whole situation. Now, we should not be celebrating all the financial windfalls that the universities receive, but they did. So all of these companies back to your comments previously, they did exactly that. The guilt, they were like, oh my God, well, we better write some checks. Let's see what's gonna happen. And so you had this onslaught of cash being thrown at a problem. And it's basically, you cut my arm off, but you're gonna have and give me a Band-Aid. What am I supposed to do with that? And that's sort of what we saw. Now, where did they fail at as far as from my standpoint from this? And I hate to do this, but my background is in marketing. I turn a lot of this stuff into marketing. From the perspective of marketing, what was the message that they were putting out? Did the message change, or did they just change the packaging of the message? And to me, they just changed the wrapping of the message. And the message was, we're just gonna do a little bit to make y'all happy so you can go away, pat you on your head. Now, there. Go stand in the corner until next time. Maybe we'll see if we can do something. Or try to make you forget. Let's drown your sorrows and all these different issues. We see it all the time when they advertise. Well, they don't advertise cigarettes anymore, and they don't advertise liquor as they used to, but they still do. But when they advertise these illicit types of things, it's to cover up. It's not to help us solve problems, it's to help cover up those problems. And people pay money to get rid of problems so they don't have to think about it. And that's, to me, is what a lot of companies fell short. They feel like if we wrote these checks, maybe they'll forget, or they'll at least give us a little forgiveness or a little leeway on what's going on. I've always said for a while that we need to have, and I'll probably be in the minority of this, but we need to have a few more shakeups in society. I was glad to see when we had all the protests. I was glad to see those voices speaking out. I was glad to see that there was a small uprising saying, hey, something's got to change. And it's time, if not now, when? Because how long has it been since we've seen that? Years, right? Since we've had those types of marches and those types of uprisings in our culture. And I also say that a lot of that needs to be put on us as well. We need to constantly, as Tony said, they can't forget. We can't be complacent with what they're giving us, saying that it's okay. We can't let you forget. I don't let any of my colleagues forget. So I did the same thing with you. Frederick said, I had someone ask me, well, how do you feel about this situation? Because I don't understand. I don't see color like that. Oh my goodness. What do you mean you don't see color? Are you colorblind? Like, what happened to you? Everybody sees color, whether it's crayon colors or it's black and white. You see some kind of color. Or I was hit with, I don't get it because you're my friend and you're not like that. What do you mean I'm not like that? I have a black son. My son and your son can go over into a certain part of Houston and my son can end up dead while your son will come home that night. What are you saying? So I had to have that conversation. It was a very rough conversation. I had to let her know, this is the world. You might not see the world and you might not walk in those shoes, but I walk in those shoes every day. Just because I work at a university where the students are predominantly Black, the people I work with are predominantly Black, and I still have those same issues. My son, we moved into a neighborhood for him to go to a better school, but he's a minority at his school. So I still have to worry about him every time he walks out that door, because he might go hang out with his friend Tommy and he might not come home that night, but Tommy will be in the bed nice and warm and sleep. So I think, as you all have said before, we got to constantly keep their feet to the fire that this isn't over. We're not done. We're not even just getting started. The ball is still rolling. It's just, we got to move that ball a little faster.
Thank you, all of you, for that. I think that the one thing that I remembered about after the George Floyd murder were the statements that I read that came out, these blanket statements of apology and here's what we're going to do next. But I remember seeing a company fumble, and I'm blanking on the company's name, and it's probably for good reason right now. I saw a company fumble when they did not consult Black people on their messaging to find out if the messaging made sense to send. And the reason why they weren't able to consult or did not consult Black people, I won't say able, I don't think that that's necessary. I think that's an excuse, is there were not enough of us at the table during those discussions when they were typing up their messages. And in addition to that, I feel strongly about the fact that, and you guys have shared this as well, the fact that there needs to be action behind it and not just words. There needs to be some clear action. I got so many phone calls, text messages, emails asking if I was okay, and not enough questions around, well, what do you think, what would you like to see differently here? What are we missing the mark on right now that we could do a better job of on the inclusivity part and the belonging piece? It's not just, and the equity piece. It's not just about diversity. I think right now companies are focused on diversity, diversity, diversity. How do we get more Black people in these seats? How do we put more Black people in the pipeline? How do we connect with HBCUs? And I think that's wonderful. We should be. However, there's some other steps in that process. It's like you get Black people in the door and they're going to walk right on out because those things are missing. I have this question, and I think we touched on this a lot during this conversation already. So be as brief as you would like to be here, because I think you guys have touched on this. What is one piece of advice you would give to allies and those who benefit from white privilege?
Tell you the truth. Be truthful. Recognize the truth, the real, authentic. Be authentic and recognize the truth. Always. And do the right thing. I don't be like Spike Lee, but you're never wrong when you do what's right. Do the right thing, even if it's unpopular.
So, my favorite ally in the world, I believe, is on this call. My former boss at LinkedIn, best boss I've ever had in my life, Katie Weiss, white woman. She does the three things that I think all allies should do if you're going to be a true ally. The first thing she does is she's sincere in her question asking. So she'll come to me and she'll ask questions because she doesn't know, she wants to know, she may have an idea, whatever it is. There's no question she could ever come to me with that I would not answer because I know it's coming from a sincere place. The second thing she does is she educates herself. So she's not just out here running around oblivious and expecting Black people to solve all the problems for her. She does her own education. She is very good and meticulous about making sure she understands what's going on. And the third and most important thing is she talks to me as Fred first, a Black man second. My experience is different than Tony's, different than Terry's, different than Dr. Cooley's. And if you aren't trying to get to know me as a person first, I don't speak for all Black people, so I can't answer your Black questions. I can't answer why we listen to certain music. I can tell you what I do. I can't tell you why fried chicken is our stigma. I can tell you what I eat. So if you're not getting to know me as a person first, you're never going to get to that deeper level with me. So that's my advice for allies. As far as white privilege goes, typically when you bring up white privilege, you either get people who are on one end of the spectrum where they don't believe it exists, or they're so apologetic for having it. Privileges exist in all sorts of forms. I have privileges that unfortunately Terra and Dr. Cooley don't have because I'm a male, and I can't help that fact. But the fact that I have them means I should be using them to speak up for Black women when I have the opportunity to. And that's what I would tell people with white privilege is you are more than likely going to be in a room that Black people are not in, and that is your opportunity to represent and speak up for Black people. One of the most powerful things I've ever heard about being in business, especially in corporate America, is every business decision that's made about you is made when you're not in the room. And if you don't have an advocate in that room who more than likely, unfortunately, doesn't look like you, or definitely the majority in that room do not look like you, then you're going to be in trouble. And one quick story about Katie West, because I love her to death, and just speaks to the point of why she's an amazing advocate for me. I was going for the job that I'm in now. I started last year in November. And when I got the call that I was getting the role, one thing my new manager said to me was, because at the time, Katie had reached out to him on my behalf. And then Katie had her boss reach out to him on my behalf. And then Katie had her boss's boss reach out to him on my behalf. And the man that gave me the job, he said, I need to know why every white woman in middle management of America is speaking out on your behalf. So I want to give you this opportunity. And had I had no one in that room for me, I probably still could have made it by myself, but it would have been a lot harder in corporate America. So having her as an ally and an advocate has been tremendous for my career, even not working for her.
Yeah, that's well said. You said a lot of the things that I was gonna say and think. So, but you know what I would say. I think the full question was, you know, what allies, what advice would you give them that benefit from white privilege? I'd say, don't be embarrassed by it and share it. You know, use your opportunities to help someone who doesn't look like you. Because again, we all do have some type of privilege. Like, again, I'm a man, just like you said, Frederick, you know, and I have different privileges for that. But again, don't be embarrassed by it, share it. That's the quickest way, I think, to make some changes and use it for some good.
Okay, I have a quick story I have to piggyback off of Frederick's. So I'd like to tell, I'm sorry, again, I make everything about marketing. So here we go. I like to tell my students, your net worth, WOTH, is only as strong as your network. And they look at me strange when I tell them that. And I said, in other words, you need to make sure that there's somebody that does know somebody on the other end of that somebody that you know. And they're like, so it is, so what's the point of getting the degree? So it is only about who you know. I said, no. I said, you got to make sure you put something along with that net worth for your network. I said, so your brand or the person that you are should walk into that room before you even arrive. And they should be able to discuss you and who you are before you get into that room. I said, however, the ship cannot be changed if there's not somebody on the ship already for you, steering it in the right direction. Lots of statements that I threw out there. But back to the statement that Frederick made about Katie Weiss for him. She was on that ship. She was part of his network. And so therefore, it helped expound on what he already had to bring to the table. Sometimes you have to have those types of allies within your network. I'm not going to ever tell anybody, because I learned a long time ago, the world is not black. Because people asked me before, especially when I graduated from my PhD program, I was actually asked by one of my professors, why do you want to go work at a HBCU? You go anywhere you want. And I said, well, I want to work at HBCU because I want to be around people that look like me so I can teach them how to be around people that look like you. Because I didn't go to a HBCU as an undergraduate. I went to a PWI. And so I had the best of both worlds. I was able to walk on both sides of the track. And he didn't quite understand it. So I had to tell him, you went before a group of people and you advocated for me. How I got in my PhD program, a phone call. I got denied by every program I applied to prior to that. But my one female white professor, I'll never forget her, love her to death, to this day. She made one phone call to my department chair, my dissertation chair, and I'm here today, and my name is Dr. Cooley. One phone call by someone that didn't look like me. Now, I had a mentor that looked like me. She did make a few phone calls as well. I'm not saying that her reach wasn't as strong, but that one phone call changed the trajectory of my life. So we have to have allies. We have to have people on both sides of the track that look like us, don't look like us, that sound like us, don't sound like us, because it's not also about black and white. It's also not about male and female. It's about cultural differences. It's about ethnical differences. All of those play into this big thing we call life, and that's what helps. We have to be willing to reach across the table to make sure that it's a give and take. So today, I have a lot of allies that don't look like me, that will stand up and speak for me, but they also know that I'm going to do the same for them. If there's a room full of people that don't look like them and they need to get into that room, I could do the same. So it's important that we understand that it takes all of that for us to be successful. But it's very important, especially for us as young professional Black women, men, students, college graduates, moving on into your career. You have to know somebody that's on the ship that doesn't look like you, that can get into that room that you can't get into, because that's what's going to make the difference at the end of the day sometimes.
It's all about that mentorship and then that sponsorship, which is taking it to the next level, which is really going out there and advocating for that person that doesn't necessarily look like you, come from the same background. Their work may not look exactly like yours looks. That is how you create the pipeline, I think. That is how I don't think it's just by sitting down, hands folded, waiting and hoping that the next person will come in and you're able to build your diversity that way and you're able to get Black people in there. I think it's really about, okay, I need to take the next step. I need to take the initiative, and I need to be the one who's saying, they're great for this role. They're great for this board. They're great for this position on this committee, and they should be a part of it, and they should take some ownership and be able to lend a voice to it. So as I talk about boards, I'm really close to my dad, and he gave me some of the best advice that was passed down to him by someone else. And it was early on in my career, was that we all need a board of directors. Every single individual needs their own board of directors. And I think that even goes back to what Dr. Cooley was saying about your network. And this is a tighter network of people that are really going to advocate and speak on your behalf. And you can bounce ideas off of them, you can build confidence, you can lean on them for advice. And ultimately, you want your mentors and your sponsors to be on that board with you. How have your mentors and sponsors impacted or influenced how you navigate corporate America? So not just the part of like getting you in the room, getting you into that position that you wanted, but how have they helped you navigate some of the politics and the stickiness that's involved in corporate America?
Okay, I'll keep it going by starting off. They're my therapists. They're my therapists. They keep me grounded. They're people that will let the emperor know when he don't have no clothes. I mean, they don't just want to tell me what I want to hear. They're my mentors, advisors, or people that will keep it 100 with me no matter what. And that's been great, because there are times where they see things that I don't see, and they're hearing things that I don't hear, and they're able to reach things that I'm not reaching. So you have to have your own type of board. You need, and also they validate. Like if I have a gut feeling about something, they'll validate it for me as well. So by all means, you have to. That's very important, especially when you're starting out in your career. Don't make a major decision without consulting your board.
So Tony nailed it right there, that validation piece. I have other tangible examples of how mentors and sponsors have helped me, like the example I just shared with the new role that I'm in now. But honestly, it's just that sounding board and validation. Working in corporate America in general can get draining at times. And sometimes you just need someone to tell you you're on the right path, or you need an ear to tell you when they know you're not living up to your potential, you're not on the right path, whether that's you're not trying to be, or you're just not in a role or company you should be at. So to that same extent, you need to be open to hearing what your board has to say. Don't just get a bunch of people that just say yes on there. Get people that are going to tell you the truth, that care about you enough to tell you the truth, and take that advice. But absolutely, that validation piece, I would not be where I'm at in my career if I didn't have a strong group of people constantly providing me with support and validation that yes, what I am doing is okay.
Yeah, that validation piece is huge. You know, I look at, you know, the board like a concierge, like in The Godfather. It was some of my favorite movies, but someone you can go to when you need a little bit of advice. You know, ultimately you make the decision, but just to have that other calm presence that can kind of guide and show you some things. What I would tell people is when you do put your board together, you know, look for board members from different generations, different backgrounds. Don't have everybody be the same. You know, try to have a diverse board, just like a corporation. You know, I've had people on my board who were scared, right? You know, and so they kind of taught me and guided me in a scarcity mentality, and I had some that emboldened me just to be authentically myself. So I would say when you find somebody to join your board, you know, make sure that you can be authentically you, and your authenticity doesn't feel like an audacity to them. So I would say pick the right members, but again, that validation piece is huge, and running major decisions by them. So
I would say make sure that your board of directors has someone that you aspire to be. So you can't necessarily, you do need people that are on your level, but you need to have some people that you are going to aspire to be one day. So that goes back to Terry's different generations and different levels of aspiration. So for example, when I started as a young professor, I made sure that I had tenured professors that were people that guided me. One of my co-authors right now, Dr. Yancey, she gave it to me raw and uncut. I mean, it was like, well, okay. Sometimes it hurt. I had to walk away, lick my wounds, but she never faltered on that. My mentor from my undergraduate, she was definitely very raw. She's still very raw and uncut. But those are people that I aspired to be. I wanted to make sure I got to their same level. So I had to know what they did, and I had to be willing to listen to that advice and take it with me. So a diverse board, more than just people that you see as yourself, but people that you want to be one day. I would say that be an extra piece of, along with what everybody else said.
Thank you. So it looks like time is not on our side right now. I know that there are several things that the panelists and myself would love to be able to share with each and every one of you. And please feel free to connect with each of the panelists over LinkedIn and, you know, continue these conversations, because I think that knowledge is wealth, especially in this platform. And I would like to also thank all of the panelists and Michael Page for the opportunity to be able to present some of these things today and share and shed light. And so with that, Samir.
Wow, we got to keep this going, man. We're rolling. We got to keep this going.
Tony, I wish we could. And do you know what? Maybe we'll run it back on another conversation. Dr. Cooley, thank you. Tony, thank you. Frederick, thank you. Terry, thank you. And Terra, thank you. What a fantastic conversation. Amazing insights. And I speak on behalf of everyone on this call. We appreciate you. The authenticity, the insights, it's just fantastic. I hope everyone's learned something. I hope everyone's had some major takeaways. I certainly have. And that's a wrap for our Black in Corporate America panel discussion. For those that are interested, in 2 weeks' time on the 16th, we're doing another panel discussion for Black in Construction, where we'll have leaders and execs, industry specific, and that is going to be hopefully a kickoff of other future specific industry Black conversations. So please join us, look out for those communications. Everyone, thank you so much for your time. Take care.
thank you.
If you found this video helpful for your recruitment journey, why not subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to tap the bell to get the latest videos first.